Autobiography of C.H. Spurgeon, Volume 3, Chapter 76, A Holiday Bride to the New Forest. On a public rest for porters in the city of London, you may read the words, "Rest, do not loiter," and they contain advice worthy of our attention. I do not call the laziness. There is a sweet doing of nothing, which is just the finest medicine in the world for a jaded worker. When the mind gets fatigued and out of order, to rest it is no mere idleness, then sleep is idleness, and no man is called lazy for sleeping the proper time. It is far better to be industriously asleep than lazily awake. Be always ready, however, to do good, even in your resting times and in your leisure hours, and so be really a minister, and there will be no need for you to proclaim that you are one. CHS and Lectures to My Students. I went the other day to St. Cross Hospital near Winchester, which some of you may know. There they gave away a piece of bread to everybody who knocks at the door. So I knocked, as bold as brass. Why should I not? If they gave the dole away to everyone, why should not I have my share? In due course the hatch was opened, and I and my friends who were with me received our portion. It was a dole to be given to everybody who came, so I did not humble myself and make anything special of it. It was meant for all, and I therefore, as one of the people who were willing to knock, was not refused. Now, even so, if the gospel is to be preached to every creature, why do you stand higgling and haggling when you want the bread of life? Why should you waste time in raising question after question when you only need to take what Jesus freely gives? I will warrant that you do not raise such quibbles against yourself in money matters. If an estate is bequeathed to you, I am sure that you do not employ a solicitor to hunt for flaws in the title or to invent objections to the will. Why do men raise difficulties against their own salvation instead of cheerfully accepting what the infinite mercy of God so graciously provides for all who, with broken hearts and willing minds, are ready to take what God the ever bountiful is so pleased to give? CHS in a sermon at the Tabernacle. A minister should be like a certain chamber which I saw in Beulah in the New Forest, in which a cobweb is never seen. It is a large lumber room and is never swept, yet no spider ever defiles it with the emblems of neglect. It is roofed with chestnut, and for some reason, I know not what, spiders will not come near that wood by the year together. The same thing was mentioned to me in the corridors of Winchester School. I was told no spiders ever come here. Our minds should be equally clear of idle habits. CHS in Lectures to My Students. I was sitting one day in the New Forest under a beech tree. I like to look at the beech and study it, as I do many other trees, for each one has its own peculiarities and habits, its special ways of twisting its bogs and growing its bark and opening its leaves and so forth. So I looked up at the beech and admired the wisdom of God in making it. I saw a squirrel running around and round its trunk and up the branches, and I thought to myself, this beech tree is a great deal more to you than it is to me, for it is your home, your living, your all. Its big branches were the main streets of his city, and its little bogs were the lanes. Somewhere in that tree he has his house, and the beech mast was his daily food. He lived on it. Well now, the way to deal with God's Word is not merely to contemplate it or to study it as a student does, but to live on it, as that squirrel lives on his beech tree. Let it be to you, spiritually, your house, your home, your food, your medicine, your clothing, the one essential element of your soul's life and growth. C.H.S. in a sermon at the Tabernacle. One of my dear husband's most congenial recreations consisted in spending a long day in the country, driving over hill and dale, and through the lanes and pretty villages of our charming county of Surrey. Many sweet days of rest have been snatched from weeks of heavy toil, and a furloughing of a few hours has helped to restore and refresh the overworked brain and heart. He would go out in good time, taking with him some choice companion or perchance another weary worker, and driving slowly they would jog along till noon, when at a pleasant wayside inn they would rest the horse and have their luncheon, returning in the cool of the evening for high tea at home at 6 or 7 o'clock. Such rest Mr. Spurgeon found very delightful, but this was surpassed and completed when a fortnight of similar days would be linked together to form a perfect holiday. Then, instead of driving back in the sunset, he would go forward, and the trip would extend itself to many towns and bring him into pleasant acquaintancy with new objects of interest and novel impressions of places and people. It was amusing at these times to note that his ideas of comfort and his disregard of external appearances were equally conspicuous. He liked a cozy seat and easy traveling, but he cared nothing for the style of his equipage. An old horse, most inappropriately named Peacock, and a shabby carriage were matters of perfect indifference to him, so long as they were safe and trustworthy, and carried him out of the noise of the crowded world into the stillness and beauty of nature's quiet resting places. I well remember, and with a pleasant thrill of regret that I ever laughed at it, his purchasing for these jaunts a vehicle of so antiquated a pattern and of such unfashionable proportions that it was immediately dubbed Punch's coach, and ever after bore that name. Its mirth-provoking aspect was increased when it was packed and prepared for a journey, for there was an arrangement behind which supported a board for luggage, and added exceedingly to its grotesque and ineloquent appearance. However, this convenient provision was, in the dear owner's estimation, one of its chief advantages, if not the very climax of its beauty, and though I laughed afresh at every glimpse of it, I loved him so dearly that I ever learned to appreciate Punch's coat for his sweet sake. As I write, and the memories of the old days surge over my mind like the billows from a distant shore, I rejoice to know that his slightest wishes were tenderly indulged, and that his beaming, loving, satisfied face, as he started off on one of these country tours, is far more deeply impressed on my heart than the remembrancy of his unsightly holiday caravan. Never was he more happy and exuberant than when making excursions of this kind, and those who were privileged to accompany him saw him at his social best, and with one accord they have testified to the grace and charm of his companionship. From the pages of his daily letters to me on one of those notable occasions, I have woven the story of his holiday drive into this single bright chapter, which, in consequence, possesses all the attractiveness of a personal narrative, and I think it well sets forth some traits in his lovely character, which could in no other way have been so naturally revealed. His intense delight in the works of God, his fine appreciation of the minute or half-concealed loveliness of nature, his care for all living creatures, his calm and contented spirit, his devotion under all circumstances to his master and his work. All these are brought into distinct relief by the lively touches of his own vigorous pen and pencil. Perhaps out of respect of the old horse previously named, and which made so many delightful journeys for my beloved, I ought to explain that the noble grays referred to in the opening sentences of the letters were owned and driven in this particular incident by a member of the party, but they had to draw Punch's coach for all that. Alton, June 1873. I am having a grand time. The horses are noble grays, the carriage with my luggage basket behind most comfortable. We go along with ease and dignity seldom equaled and never surpassed. From Guildford we drove to the foot of Martha's Chapel and climbed to the very summit. What a view! Then down and back to Guildford and up the Hog's Back. Mistaking the route, we went up an old deserted Roman road, immensely broad and all green. What a piece of country! The road itself was a sight, and the views on either side were sublime. So on to Farmham, where we dined and went into the Bishop's Park, which you will remember with its dear and avenue of elms. From Farham to Eldon is pretty and fruitful, but there were no incidents. I revised part of a sermon last night and went to bed at 11:30. Fell asleep at once and neither stirred nor dreamed. I woke at 6, then got up and finished the sermon. Already I am much better than I feel able to go to work again, quite. We go to Selborne this afternoon. How I wish you were with me, but you shall know anything I see which can help you to realize where I am and what I am doing. By the way, this morning we went into the church here and saw an old door which was riddled with the parliamentarians. We were also regaled with a superabundance of organ music, which a young gentleman volunteered. The church is restored very beautifully and in good taste. Same day later, the drive was delicious and I feel so well. Selborne is a little heaven of delights. It is Switzerland in miniature, where every turn changes the scene. If it were in a foreign land, all the world would crowd to it. We were all charmed. Who could be otherwise? Well, might White write so prettily on so choice a subject. Hill, dell, bony, hanger, down, lane, and wood. One has them all within a very small compass and with endless variety. We have returned to Alton to send off some of our party, and now at a council of war we have decided to visit Selborne again tomorrow and see more of that gem of a village. Selborne, what a grand morning we have had. Up to the hangar above the village we climbed by a zigzag path and had a very extensive view. It was delicious to ramble among the tall beeches and peep down into the village and then to descend into the place itself by winding paths. We went to White's house and were received very kindly by Professor Bell and his wife, both very aged persons. We were soon known and had in honor. The poor complaint of the parsonage neglect of them and their lack of anything to hear which they can understand. We rambled about as in a paradise, and then were off to El Reesford. What enjoyment I have had, and what health is upon me. I never felt better in my life. We are all so happy that the scenery that we do not know how to be grateful enough. Oh, that you were here. On these days, I hope and pray you may be able to come. From El Reesford, we have driven here, Winchester, along the beautiful valley of the Itchen, Itchen, and your dear note was all I wanted to make me full of joy. Letters had accumulated here up to Wednesday. I have already answered 25 and Mr. B. many others. So we are keeping the work under. Winchester is a rare old place. We went down to the hospital of St. Cross and had a piece of bread and a cup of beer. The cups are of horn, very fine silver crosses on them, and my trio of friends brought one for me for a souvenir and present for my coming birthday. I noticed that poor men took a hunch of bread, while gentlemen were satisfied to receive a mere mouthful, and I thought, none feed on Christ so fully as the poor and hungry. The dole is exhausted about noon, but the mercy of God continues to the 11th hour. Having tasted of the hospitality of St. Cross, we passed into its rectangle under the arch of the Beaufort Tower. It is here that the dole is given, and here we saw some of the old brethren in their gowns with crosses. There are 13 of these old pensioners, and they get 2 quarts of beer to drink every day, and on gouty days, gin and beer hot. Indeed, these old Saxon institutions appear to have regarded beer as the grand necessity of life. We walked and talked and then sat down on the steps leading up to the dining hall and quietly looked on the curious scene. In the days when the place was built, chimneys were a new invention, and therefore they are all external and have a grotesque appearance. On one side are the cloisters, and the further end is a noble church, in which service is performed twice a day. Our next visit was to St. Catherine's Hill, but as I could not pretend to climb it, we kept along the hill bank till we reached the cathedral. Here, a most excellent, intelligent guide made a couple of hours pass away as if they had only been so many minutes. I know more about architecture now than I had ever imagined I could learn, and I am able to talk quite fluently about early English, decorated, Norman, etc., etc. It was strange to see the chests in which bore the bones of Edgar, Ethelwulf, and all those old Saxon kings in the Sarcophagus of William Rufus. There is a kaleidoscope window, all the true old material, but no design, order, or arrangement. It reminded me of some men's theological knowledge. Their system is of the anyhow character. The thing which pleased us most was a pulpit into which I ascended. The whole place was full of interest, even down to the crypt, into which we ventured. After the cathedral, we visited the famous school of William Wykeham, Wykeham, where the tending took place. It is like one of the Cambridge colleges, and very quaint are its ways. The photograph I send you shows the tower of the school chapel and the Quakers' meeting-looking place. In front is the French school. We saw the dining hall and the great buttery hatches through which the meat and beer are passed, of which the boys have as much as they choose. Saxton again. Near the kitchen is the ancient painting of the faithful servant, which seems to be held in high repute at Winchester, but I think it is a poor thing. I have been up St. Gilles Hill above Winchester and watched the setting sun, and have seen the lamps lit one after another all along the hill. It was very beautiful indeed, and the evening was so cool and calm it did me a world of good. Salisbury. Today has been very dull and wet. Our drive through Hursley to Romsey was all very well, but from Romsey here there was a constant downpour, and it got to be rather wearisome. It rains still, and I feel very tired, but a sunny tomorrow will set me up again. I don't like big hotels in towns like dear old Hatches and the Blessed Trees. Amesbury, Sabbath. Last evening he went into the grounds of Abbey Park, the property of Sir Edward Anthrobus. The river Avon runs through the domain in many windings, branches, and twistings. The grounds are thickly wooded, but so little frequented that we heard the hoarse crow of the peasant, the coo of pigeons, the cry of waterfowl, the song of countless birds, and the plush of leaping fish. No sound of man's profaning footsteps. We sat on the ornamental bridge and listened to the eloquence of nature, while the river hastened along beneath us. The family being away, we had leave to wander anywhere, and we enjoyed the liberty very much. I was up this morning at 6 o'clock, dressing slowly and meditating. Then I came down and had an hour's work at the Interpreter. I do not mean to preach today except with my pen, and it is a great pleasure to me to use that instrument when thought flows freely. May you also have a quiet day and gather strength. May the Lord God of Israel bless my own best beloved and cause his face to shine upon her. We had a nice little service yesterday morning, and after dinner we went into the woods again. How I wished you could have been with me. Imagine a series of cathedrals of beech trees, the pillars all of silver, and the roof of emerald lacework in twinkling stars of sunlight. The walls of dense young trees, and the floor ankle-deep of red and brown leaves, softer than a velvet carpet. Rain fell, but under the yawns we only heard its patter, and we still lay still. We could hear the wild ducks on the stream far below, making love and war. Presently the sun came out, and we walked along the grand avenues up to a hill which stood in a cliff above the Avon, with the Abbey House full in view, and the Beacon Hill and the Wiltshire range of downs with plentiful tumuli. Here again we saw pheasants in the mead on the other side, one white one among them, and wild ducks and coos on the river, diving, swimming, and flying after one another. Shallows were all around us. Wood pigeons came every now and then, and some were in the trees cooing constantly. Hawks posed themselves in the air. Flocks of starlings flew overhead like November meteors. Thrushes and blackbirds sang. And last of all there came on downy young pinions, white-breasted and round-faced, your friend the owl, who sped into the wood, and was soon followed by another, whose soft course on noiseless broad-sail wings could have made you nestle up to me for joy and whisper, "O husband, how lovely!" All the while the fish leaped as if they were quite at home, for we were as high above them and all the other things as if we were on a church spiral. We then walked down green alleys and startled the rabbits in families, and we stood still. We saw their gamblets and marked the hares sitting upright, so that, seeing only their backs, we might have been mistaken for stumps of trees, if it had not been for their ears. I send you a sketch of them. A sneeze made them run, or rather leap away. Then we came on young partridges and hencoops, which we left at once for fear of offending, and so came in to tea, walking along the river bank and smelling the new-mown hay. It was a sweet Sabbath. Today and yesterday I went down 24 pages of the Interpreter and had 16 more to do when I came. Love is deep as the sea and as broad. I send you thee, my dear one. Lindenhurst, 3 dainty notes have I devoured, real delicacies, flavored with the love I prize above all earthly things. This place is so beautiful that to linger here a week or two will be delightful, and better than going elsewhere. On the way here we drove to Broadlands and had a good view of the interior. There is a as fine a collection of pictures as I ever saw, distributed over a house replenished with comforts and conveniences. The temples and Palmerstons were set forth in noble portraits, but there were many works of Sir Joshua Reynolds, Sir Peter Lely, Wolverman, and other great masters, many Dutch painters, and a large number full of interest and truly instructive works of art. A mile further we saw Emily Park, where Miss Nightingale was born, and another 4 or 5 miles brought us into the forest amidst the wildest scenery and boundless wilderness of shade. Sabbath. I have been to the little Baptist church and have been much refreshed with a plain sermon from Master, Carest thou not that we perish? We then walked in the woods and talked and meditated. It is a grand thing to be lost in the woods within 5 minutes coming out of a meeting house. June 19, 1873. This is my 39th birthday, and I desire to bless God for sparing and blessing me and for giving me as one of His choicest gifts my own dear precious wife. May we be spared to one another for many a day and dwell together forever hereafter. Thank you for your dear fond letter. Truly it is sweet to be so dearly loved, and to love in return with an eagerness which could understand limping expressions, much more the tender words which you employ. God bless thee. It has rained all day, so we have all been to be photographed, gratifying our vanity, since we could not indulge our observation. I am blessed. I am promised a copy of the group tonight, for this is posted, though it will not have been long enough in water to prevent its fading. But if it pleases you for a moment, it will answer my purpose. What do you think of your old hub in the forest? Does he not look calm and happy? I think the old log just suits him, and that shabby old coat too. I like the photograph better than any portrait ever taken of me. I wonder if you will. After I wrote to you yesterday, I worked a little while at the interpreter, but soon felt one of my old attacks coming on. So we set off for a long walk, and at some time past 10 o'clock at night, we lost our way in the thick of the forest, only we knew the direction of Lyndhurst by the chimes. After breakfast, through the long grass, brambles, brackens, and underwood, we came to the edge of the dense enclosed forest in which we had been wandering. But a ditch and a pond barred our way. However, there was some rails of fencing across, and over this we climbed, and went along above the water. We landed in a field of high grass and made tracks for a cottage, got into the garden down the path, and out in front gate, nobody challenging us. This adventure did me good and procured me a fair night's sleep. Today we have been to look at the scene of our night wandering and to find out where we missed our way. We have roamed in the woods for 2 hours and never seen a soul. Birds, rabbits, flies, ants, and spiders have been our only company, save the one with whom we have held sweet concourse, and of whose word we have spoken to each other. We have been for a drive to Leamington. It was charming to pass through the forest. Each road has its own character, and there is no sameness. I had a fine supply of tracks, and so the region well. Bishop's Waltham. We left delightful Lyndhurst at about 9 o'clock this morning and drove along a charming road till we reached Southampton and crossed by the horse ferry to go to Netley and explore the ruins of its abbey. Certainly no place could be more congenial for an hour or so of rest. One can clamber up to the top of some places, especially in the South Transept, where there is a walk on a sort of narrow ledge under the arches below the window. I was greatly interested, but could only keep on saying to myself, how I wish my dear wifey were here. Now, from there we went to see Victoria Hospital, driving along by the edge of Southampton Water. Such a fine drive. The hospital is the largest building in England. I should think it is nearly half a mile long. Then we went over the hills to Botley, where the views were boundless, and so on to this queer old town. We have been wandering among the ruins of the Castle Palace, where Henry II and COEUR-DE-line have feasted in the days gone by. It has been a cool, lovely day, and the way splendid. Ockley, O-C-K-L-E-Y. We strolled into the park and sat on a fallen tree. Presently a squirrel came and peeped at us, and not knowing our faces, he scudded away and went up a beach. And he came down again, waving his tail on high, and passed us on another tree. Then came a doe and a fawn and stood and stared, and others followed, and in Indian file went slowly off. It became cold, so we trotted in to tea, and this done I pinned a line to my darling, almost the last she will get before my return. My dear little note has just come from you, and rejoiced my heart. What joy to meet my beloved again, and find her better. On Sunday we went and sat with the Quakers and created an event. A portly female was moved to speak, and also to admonish us against water baptism. She was one of the old school, and evidently relieved her soul by her exhortation. In the afternoon we had a fine storm and refreshing rain, and I revisited a sermon and wrote on a song. Received a great flood tide of love from my heart to yours. May God bless us in returning to each other's beloved society and spare us for many years to one another. End of chapter 76, having been read by Peter John Parisi, also known as Brian Dean. None of my audios are copyrighted. Please feel free to make as many copies as you desire, to the glory of God.